Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. It's the 10th of December 2013 and it's 1 minute past 1. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth on a bit of a nippy day, Brian.
Yes, a bit sort of grey, dampish grey, Devon.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks.
Several people have asked us why we cover the weather in the way we do, and the answer is because we find it a bit of fun, and there's not much fun around at the moment, so that's just our little joke. But actually, we've been pretty accurate with our forecasts, haven't we?
Always, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, unusually for us, we're going to just start by mentioning the BBC and Nelson Mandela all in one breath. This is from the Independent newspaper, where it informs us that the BBC is going to do a tribute scene in EastEnders. We are just going to say that, and that is all we're going to say. Well, if we think we've got problems in the country, we've only got to look at people like this. We have seen politicians being shown as liars, cheats, criminals, drug takers, pornographers and paedophiles. But Marxist Miliband says that what people are really concerned about is if they pay themselves 11%. So that's what his focus is on, and we're going to believe that these people are now in a desperate battle to stop having to accept this money that's being forced on them by these terrible people who've got more power than the politicians. You must take this money, you must have this. And of course, remember, we're talking about a pay rise which is more than many people earn. Do we believe a word these people say? No. Miliband, of course, in his sharp suit, brought up in the Marxist mould, so we can't trust him. The Tory toffs and Nick Clegg, well, despicable man running a party, of course, with a reputation of abuse against women.
I mean, we've been talking about this for months, about this 11% pay rise, which they were looking to get. They have got it, but let's just not forget the Salvation Army are handing out more food packages in this country than they have done since World War II. But they in Westminster feel that they deserve the 11% pay rise as well as the Queen with 22%. There's something seriously wrong, and if people can't recognise that and start getting in touch with their MPs, then we've got an even bigger problem if people can't see it.
We gently say that no MP should wake up these days without knowing that within an hour or so the phone is going to ring and their computer is going to be churning out emails of people saying to them, either you start to do your job or you won't be there after the next election. That's the simple message. Yeah. So we've got a mess in the country, and at the moment there's a lot of propaganda coming out in the press and mainstream media. We're going to attempt to work our way through it today. But this is one article that we found in the Mirror and we haven't seen elsewhere. But I think it's a total of 13 soldiers from the British Army that have apparently been court-martialed for sitting down and refusing to get up. They were part of the British Army in Kenya, and the troops were supposedly moaning that they were led by Muppets. And I'm going to say that my personal comment on this is that it takes a lot for the average squaddie to start to say that they're not going to obey orders. So although it's not reported in this article at all, I would suspect that there's some real background to what these men were complaining about. Of course, we're not told that. What we are told is the judge's remarks that many of these men had served with distinction in Afghanistan, and it was a disgrace to the British Army and a disgrace to Britain that they were refusing to obey orders. So once again, we're seeing Britain's judges laying down the law. Other people are having to take the rap, do the work. Who are Britain's judges? How are they appointed? We don't know how they're appointed. And we're going to say to viewers and listeners, if anybody out there has got professional knowledge as to how this process works, or you'd be prepared to do some research, we think it's time that the British public learned exactly how our judges are selected, who appoints them, and who is ultimately accountable for their very poor performance in dealing with a massive criminality at the top of the establishment. Been a bit forceful there, but have a look at it yourselves. Yeah. Well, the rot is always at the top, Mike, and you've got a couple of interesting articles here.
Right. Well, this is Richard Dearlove, ex-head of MI6, and he's resigned as Master of Pembroke College, Cambridge. And this looks like a bit of positioning going on with regard to the Chilcot inquiry. So basically, Dearlove is currently bound to keep his mouth shut regarding the lead up to the Iraq invasion under Tony Blair as a result of the Official Secrets Act. And he feels pretty hard done by that there may be some criticism of him within the report of the Chilcot inquiry. And so what he's done for the last year is to head off on sabbatical and write what's being called here a detailed account of the events leading up to the war. And if I just quote this from the Telegraph, it says, if he faces censure by the Chilcot inquiry, he may place his detailed account in the public domain. So this really seems to be a threat from Dearlove that if he personally experiences any criticism over because obviously MI6 did receive a lot of criticism just after with regard to the Yellow Cake and the souped up dossier. Well, he's saying it's not his fault, and in fact he's mainly blaming Alistair Campbell, and he's going to be pretty upset and may put this document that he's writing he had intended would only appear posthumously. So we wait with bated breath. Perhaps this gives us a clue that Chilcot may be reporting in the not too distant future, which would be nice.
It would be nice. It would certainly be nice to get the truth for a change. Would appear that this man's got some guts if he's prepared to openly be saying he's standing up against the establishment, unless, of course, that is itself a scam. But maybe I'm getting cynical these days.
Just moving on to Syria for a second then. Basically, this is the Syrian government calling on the United Nations to get Saudi Arabia to stop supporting the extremist Islamists who are fighting in Syria at the moment. And just to quote them, they say, "We call on the UN Security Council to take the necessary measures to put an end to the unprecedented actions of the Saudi regime, which is supporting Sunni extremist terrorism tied to Al-Qaeda." Now, of course, we've reported this many times, particularly since Prince Bandar became head of the Saudi intelligence services, that he has been personally taking charge of many of the more extreme sections of the Syrian opposition, and he attempted to get them all working under one brand name, which was the Al-Nusra Front. He didn't succeed in doing that terribly well, and in fact, things are a bit more fractious than ever now as a result of the fact that Britain and America didn't help the opposition as they had intended to do. But nonetheless, Saudi Arabia is still seen as a key backer of rebels in Syria. And this is the Syrian government attempting to get the United Nations to do something about it.
And of course, in the meantime, the deaths go on and on. We're still receiving daily statistics of the number of civilians killed in Syria, and we will continue to publish those figures that we're getting. So at the end of the day, we've got another absolute mess in an overseas country, we believe as the result of direct meddling and intervention by the British government, but of course also the Americans in the background and the industrial military complex, which stands to make billions out of continuing trouble and violence. Well, back at home, we've got we've got a confused picture if we look at the papers, but this is a topic which comes up again and again. I'll apologise here. I think this is from the Daily Mail. I've forgotten to put the Daily Mail's logo on. But it's in your face: protect children, fight the grooming gangs. And of course, the inference is that all paedophiles are Asians, and this is what the meat of the article is about. And there's some criticism of the police in that apparently they are not being tough enough. We think either the BNP gentleman here is part of something which is connected to the government, or he's missing the point in what is actually going on at the moment in the UK. So we'll emphasise here that the UK column, for just one example, has been trying to take the lid off white paedophiles operating in the Oxford area. There has been a massive cover-up between Thames Valley Police, Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, and Oxford County Council itself. We called it a conspiracy of silence. Who was the man trying to protect the white children? Well, actually, it was an Asian gentleman. But to date, the local authorities have absolutely refused to take the proper action to get these white men to court. What's really going on? Well, this is what we think is going on. By targeting Asian paedophile gangs and drawing public attention to them, the British establishment can continue to protect the high-level white paedophiles. And of course, yesterday we reported that now there's photographs and video footage of politicians. Tory politician was mentioned by the Mirror.
The Mirror, yeah, an ex-Tory MP who is still alive, high-ranking. There is a video of him out in a sex party with children. Yeah. So, but there's been no more on that story. I went looking for it. I think that was out Sunday. There was nothing else out.
Of course not, because the aim of the game is the establishment closes it down. Yeah. So we have Jimmy Savile mixing with the royal family, Margaret Thatcher, senior politicians.
Prince Charles.
Yeah, Prince Charles walking in and out of a myriad of hospitals, Broadmoor, and a variety of other places, including the BBC. But nobody knew what he was doing. Although all of the victims coming forward, talking to people like Bill Maloney from Pie and Mash Films, but others, and some of them ourselves, are all naming who was there at the parties. And what we come down to is the fact we are talking about utter filth at the top of the British establishment. And we presume this is why the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Bernard Brogan-Howe, has said that he's not investigating the paedophile activities of Member of Parliament Cyril Smith. So we're gently going to push home there that if you think that the paedophile rings in UK are all being run by Asian gangs or newcomers to the British Isles, I'm afraid the truth is rather different. The abuse of children and the child trafficking is being run from the heart of the British establishment itself. Well, we're not worried about the abuse of children because this is where Britain gets its advice from. It's pizza land. And basically we've got Lance Batchelor here. What is his role in society? Well, he runs a chain of pizza shops. And he says that we should be letting in more migrants for the jobs that Britons don't want. Not only has he said this, but the mainstream press are picking up on it as if there's some credibility in what he says. But it seems to me that what he's hinting at, if I can get this to come up on the screen, here we are, is we need to get in more poorly paid migrants so that I can maximise my pizza profits. Or am I missing something here, Mike, with this, chat?
I don't think so. I mean, we'll be talking about housing later on, and really at the end of the day, is he paying a salary that anybody could use in order to buy a house or even to rent a house these days? I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, unless the only people that he can pay his salary to are people that are prepared to live in multi-occupancy accommodation with 10 or 15 people in one room or something. I don't know how people are supposed to live on what the types of salaries these people are paying.
Yeah, but we got the two smartly suited gentlemen grinning inanely, and these are the people to give economic advice to the country, and the media picks up on it.
Donated any of that food to some of the people who can't feed themselves this year?
Well,
even though it's rubbish, wheat and all that, but even so, they'll shove that down their throats as quick as they can.
Sure, we can't say that Domino pizzas are rubbish. It's a particular style of food, and if you want to eat that style of food, it's up to you. We did call Domino Pizzas this morning to see whether we could find out what they had to say about this. They got rather hot under the collar, said they would email us one of their press statements, but we hadn't seen it before we actually started the programme. So there we are. The people advising the Chancellor on running Britain are the owners of pizza chains. Well, if we go to the other extreme, just take a look at this photograph. This is, of course, Home Secretary Theresa May. The government is delaying, that actually I think means hiding, an EU immigration report because it's too positive. It's full of glowing statements as to how well the EU open border policy is working. And I think young Theresa is realising that this is not going to go down well. But look at that face, and we really just wanted to make a comment. If the eyes are the window to the soul, there's nothing behind those eyes, is there?
Absolutely nothing.
And this is the woman who's controlling law and order in Britain, and we wonder why there's a complete shambles going on. It's right in front of you, isn't it? So, well, of course, immigration has been mentioned, but let's come in at a different angle. We've apparently got a report coming out. Labour MP Margaret Hodge is talking about a damning report. And what's the report saying? Well, UK has lost control of its borders. Well, of course, this was supposed to happen, which is why Common Purpose guru Lynn Homer was put in. And during her time, of course, the organisation fell apart. We didn't know how many people were coming into the country. Was this an accident? No, this was to open Britain's borders fully in line with the EU policy. So everybody suffers, people who've been resident in UK for many years. And of course, the real victims are people that are encouraged into Britain. But what are they going to end up doing? Living on the streets, working, shelf stacking, or eating... Delivering pizzas, maybe. Well, more and more people leads us to have a look at housing. And, of course, at the moment, we've got surveyors predicting that house prices will go up over the next 3 months to reach a 14-year high. But, of course, the key thing is they're all saying that... we've got to build more houses, and more houses. Here's Minister Nick Bowles, and he's saying that we've got to build more houses. And if we build more houses, it'll stop the prices rising. We just like to point this out. More homes and not more jobs. Who are the mysterious people who will have no jobs but will buy or rent the homes? And who's going to pay for the roads and other public infrastructure? These are never mentioned. But I think you know a bit more about this, Mike.
Right, so Mark Carney here. I mean, private property is to be confiscated. That's what this is about. So this is Mark Carney saying that he is concerned about the potential for a UK housing bubble, but he's going to tighten lending if necessary. And what he actually said was, there's a history in the housing market of moving from stall speed to warp speed. We want to avoid that. Well, that's very amusing, since it was his organisation in cahoots with George Osborne that started the housing market back up again with the funding for lending scheme. And let me just say it once again: the housing market is not a housing market; it's a debt market. But that's another story. So anyway, he started it up again, so it's too late to complain about it now, really. And then the National Housing Federation, which has just released a report today, basically warning of the widening gap in demand and the supply of housing, meaning, and they said, quote, an entire generation will be locked out of home ownership and are forced to rent for life. But unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do that either, because the study points out that house prices are set to grow by 35% by 2020, but private sector rents are also likely to soar by 39% over the same time period. So their report is calling this two broken housing markets. And they're saying that an extra 310 working people a day, that's 1 every 5 minutes, are currently turning to the government for housing benefit. So, and that's really what this is about. Of course, this is Agenda 21 in action. Private property ownership is to be ended. Everyone is to be beholden to the state for accommodation, in fact, for just about every other aspect of life. And of course, that's the best way to keep everybody in line when you're running a dictatorship. The threat of them losing their benefits, losing their housing, losing their food parcels, that keeps people in line. That's what we're looking at here on a long-term basis. This guy knows that, and they know exactly what they're doing with this.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. And of course, the other part of the jigsaw, which we're going to move on to, is the third sector. We started to hear about this, of course, under Tony Blair. But this was an incestuous mix of charities and non-governmental organisations, the famous NGOs, Quangos, and also a huge range of change agencies in the form of trusts and think tanks. Sorry, were you signalling?
Yeah. Just before we move on from this, I just wanted to make one final point on it, and that is that the average house price in the UK is expected to rise to around £350,000. Now, the average salary at the moment is £30,000, and salaries are actually falling in real terms for the foreseeable future. So, this really makes the point. How is anybody on even a household with two £30,000 incomes, how are they supposed to pay for a £350,000 mortgage? It isn't. Well, of course, it isn't possible.
They're not, Mike. You've spelt it out. We're moving very, very quickly now towards a dictatorship. We can call it socialist. We can call it fascist. It's a bit of both. It's communitarian. And essentially, we are not going to be allowed to own property. You have to live in property. Well, you'll be totally dependent on the state. And of course, if the state removes property from you, then of course your children are at risk, and we'll be coming on to that.
That's what they are doing, because people have to pay for their care, so the councils are making people sell their homes, so then there's no homes to be passed on to grandchildren, etc.
Yeah, so that strips out wealth from generations. Yeah. Well, I've just put in a couple of slides which you haven't seen, Louise, so okay. I'll cover these and then we'll get you onto the charities are in the paper. This was the Independent, the price of charity. Save the children exposed after seeking approval of energy firms. I've just wanted to say here that many people, very generous to charities, they give their money to Oxfam or Barnardo's, whatever it is, thinking that they're doing a good job, but they've never taken a look behind the scenes to see actually what the organisation is they're donating to and what they do. And of course, some of them have got a totally political agenda, like Common Purpose. It calls itself a charity, but what is it carrying out? It's carrying out a totally political, socio-economic agenda. So these beasts are now being allowed through the system by the Charity Commission. Many people have suggested that the Charity Commission itself should be shut down because we've now got a multi-billion-pound charity industry which is clearly not helping the individual or the poorest or most vulnerable individuals. What they're really about is maximising profit. And certainly in some of the material you've produced today, Louise, I had a read through that, and they're gaily talking about maximising the money supposedly for the benefit of people. How bad's it got? Well, this picture really sums it up for me. This is the Prime Minister surrounded by...
One Direction.
I wasn't even going to mention them, Louise, actually. I just look at the young man. I don't know his name. I don't want to know his name. That's over David Cameron's shoulder. Looks something like a wild animal. This is really what David Cameron is about. This man is so detached from reality. He thinks that these young men are important to this country or the well-being. I thought we'd just put the notice at the top left-hand corner to avoid confusion. David Cameron, Prime Minister, can be seen as the centre figure. If you're not sure which of these idiots the Prime Minister is, he's the one in the centre. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, this is the most important thing in this country, because One Direction is the common purpose. It's the one direction that we all move in. They represent that ideology.
And the charity sector, as we've just mentioned, is a key part, of course, of the third sector, which is now starting to take over democratic government such as it is. So if you want to understand this ongoing collapse of society, and you have to understand it to stop it, to prevent it happening, we've got to take apart the charity industry. Now, I'm very pleased to say I have never donated a penny to Red Nose Day, and the reason is I believe that, this is my personal opinion, that Red Nose Day was about seeing whether you could get a nation to become so foolish people will walk around with red noses on. But very interesting, we're now starting to find some
Yeah.
Interesting information about charities.
Yeah. So BBC Panorama are tonight going to be exposing charity Comic Relief, which the BBC get behind. They broadcast its annual event every year. And according to the Daily Mail, Panorama have been sitting on this story for over 2 months because executives at the BBC were worried they would offend the Comic Relief bosses. Interestingly, though, salaries for these top bosses at Comic Relief have soared in the last 5 years. Their chief executive, Kevin Carhill, his salary is £131 a year. 131,000
yeah,
a year.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Pounds.
Oh, did I? 131,000
If he was simply being paid £131 a year, I'd actually give him a fiver because he's probably destitute.
Okay, and apparently 5 of the directors actually earn over 80,000 a year. So this article, it states that Comic Relief 2000 and 2008 accounts showed millions were invested into company shares, including alcohol, arms and tobacco. 2.7 million was invested into tobacco firms. 300,000 were given to an anti-smoking charity, and I think we've got a little diagram. So here we have.
This is British American Tobacco.
This is British American Tobacco. So in this industry, the Comic Relief invested 2.7 million in investments, while they gave a anti-smoking charity. Target Tuberculosis, which is raising awareness of smoking and the lungs and TB. They were given £300,000 given to them by Comic Relief. And then if we move on, we have 310,000 was invested in Diageo, which is an alcohol manufacturing firm. But Comic Relief got behind a campaign which was headed by Russell Brand last year called Give It Up for Comic Relief, where it's saying people should be giving up alcohol and tobacco for Comic Relief and giving the money to Comic Relief while they invest their money in Diageo.
Do you think Russell Brand actually knows what this is about?
Russell Brand's an ex-heroin addict.
Right.
And he goes and he tries to counsel. But we also have to remember that Russell Brand is also dating Jemima Khan, i.e. Rothschild, so there's a little link there that we came out with.
Connected.
He is well connected, and unfortunately there are a lot of people within the certain truth movement who are seeing him. This guy is great. He's a spiritual leader, but at the end of the day, yes, he's giving out a message. But then you look at who he's connected with and his relationship with Jemima Rothschild. Banking corporations, you've got to kind of doubt. Yeah, you've kind of got to doubt what he's saying. Is he really for real, or is he got a purpose behind him?
We could say he could be deceived as well, because many people are.
Maybe.
So we just hope that as more information comes out, we're going to see more people understand that what they've been caught up, and we've all been caught at some stage, haven't we?
Absolutely. So then, just to continue this, so that was the tobacco and alcohol. So now we have 630,000 was invested in BAE Systems, which are basically a arms manufacturing company. But at the same time, Comic Relief support charities such as War Child, and how they go across the world supporting the children who have been injured and harmed in any way.
It just reminds me, I think there was an article in the paper yesterday or the day before, which was about some huge BAE contract. I think it was 20 billion for selling Eurofighters in the Middle East. And I was just intrigued to see our Minister of War, Mr. Hammond, was there praising BAE. And it also brought to mind the fact that we've been getting some very interesting information that at the moment British troops are being brought home from Germany. And we understand that once again, facilities and equipment, we believe that also includes heavy armour, is being left in Germany. So essentially all that's coming back home are the British soldiers. With no equipment. And this has happened in Iraq. We know that it's due to happen in Afghanistan, where billions and billions of pounds of British equipment will simply be left on site. So what we're seeing is the British Armed Forces stripped of equipment.
Exactly.
Sorry to drop that one into that one.
But back to Comic Relief. There have also been questions raised, actually, about 100 million that apparently Comic Relief is still sitting on. and they will not answer where this money had been invested in, whether yet again had been invested in arms, alcohol and tobacco. But they have released a statement, and it's too long to really go through, but it says Comic Relief rewards grants to a wide range of charities delivering long-term change to people with very tough lives. And then they go on with regards to their investments for Comic Relief. Because the range of issues we support is so broad, ethical screening will significantly limit our ability to invest, as well as seriously increase financial risk. Therefore, ethical screening would have left us unable to meet both our legal and moral obligations to maximise returns and look after the money in our care with appropriate level of risk. I don't know if Mike would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, why are they investing it all? They raise multiple tens of millions of pounds every year. Why aren't they spending that every year? Why aren't they spending the money that they raise every year in order to make people's lives better? I mean,
well, they have big pay rises, pay salaries.
Well, part of their excuse, and this statement is a long list of excuses, is that the Charity Commission says that if charities have money in the bank, it's got to be invested, and that's the excuse they use. But something you said there, I just thought was wonderful. It says that due to their moral stance, they're unable to carry out ethical screening. So we've got very high moral standards, and we attain those standards by not doing any ethical screening. Well, of course, it's nonsense, and the reason it's nonsense is these are not proper charities. They are actually organs of the government, and I think, Mike, you're going to delve into the Cabinet Office here, which is where most of this stuff stems from.
Right, well, this morning, and actually, they sent out this tweet once again. They've been sending this out for a few days now. It's calling for everyone to join the Big Volunteer, and they promise to pay a £5 for everyone that does, and they're paying the £5 to the Text Santa campaign, which is ITV's annual campaign. The website looks very nice, doesn't it? And there is, in fact, is the confirmation that the government is donating a £5. Sorry, yes?
Is that not One Direction there?
No, it's not. It's Union J.
Oh,
and I
they
can't
all look the same?
Well, exactly, indeed.
Okay.
But anyway, yes, no, that's not One Direction. It's Union J.
All right.
So anyway, the website looks very nice, doesn't it? Well, here we go. This is what they're about. They say that it's their annual fundraising campaign. It's ITV's Comic Relief, perhaps. They raise money for a select group of charities, for example, Age UK, Bernardo's, Beat Bullying, British Heart Foundation, Click Sargent, Help the Hospices. So, again, brilliant stuff. That seems to be fairly worthwhile. And who's backing them? Well, we've got Vodafone and Santander. We've got Morrison's, Amazon, Hallmark, Bush Grub, Hobbycraft, and Santa Claus on Stage. But it's when we get to the Big Volunteer page that we start to get, things start to get a bit more interesting, because behind this, of course, is the Do It, which is the main sort of database of volunteer opportunities in the UK. So let's have a look at their yes, that would just show that that's what they're talking about, is Do It. And here's the Do It website. That looks very nice as well. And when we look at their supporters, who have we got? Well, we've got the Cabinet Office, who's paying the £5 per volunteer. We've got Oracle, the world's biggest database provider, and we've got NCVO, who apparently champion volunteering and civil society. Now, when we look at NCVO, there's their website, and that looks very nice as well, doesn't it? When we look at we've got some purple and green there, so perhaps it's common purpose colours, but anyway, we have a look at their trustees, and at their head is Martin Lewis, who we all know is a well-known face of BBC and ITV News over the years. He's not on the TV anymore, but he has been for many, many years. But let's just pick one thing out of his CV, and that is that he is trustee of the Windsor Leadership Trust. So let's take this a little bit further then. Here's the Windsor Leadership Trust. That's their website. And here is a typical Windsor Leadership Trust document, Developing Tomorrow's Leaders. And this is the CBI Guide to Leadership by Professor John Adair. And here's a quote out of it. what they're saying here is public leadership programs should be used selectively. Their chief value is to get managers out of their corporate silos and cross-fertilizing with managers from a wide variety of organisations. Recommended programmes in this context include the use of the Windsor Leadership Trust, the Whitehall and Industry Group, the Campaign for Leadership, and of course Common Purpose. I think about a year ago, Martin Edwards and I wrote this article, and here's a quote from it. The Windsor Leadership Trust supports the CLOR Leadership Programme. The CLOR Leadership Programme is supported by Common Purpose. The relationship between these organisations is incestuous in nature. So let's just have a look at how incestuous it is. Here's the CLOR website. Here's what they say that they do. The CLOR Leadership Programme is an initiative of the Clore Duffield Foundation, which aims to strengthen leadership across a wide range of cultural activities. And here are the supporters of the Clore Leadership. We've got Common Purpose there. We've got the Windsor Leadership Trust, so they're both there. Well, that's good. So Common Purpose, Windsor Leadership Trust. Let's have a look at some Clore graduates. And here we've got a list, and every single one of them, barring a couple, is Common Purpose graduate themselves. More, here's some more. Common Purpose, Common Purpose, Common Purpose. Everywhere you see it, Common Purpose. So Clore and Common Purpose, absolutely incestuous relationship. Here's another example. Here's a Windsor Leadership Trust man, Oliver Mack, who is now Managing Director of Common Purpose Customised, and he's also Chief Operating Officer of Common Purpose International. And here's another example, Doug King, and he was, until recently, the Assistant Private Secretary to the Queen. So this goes right to the top. Now, the Windsor Leadership Trust, of course, is absolutely associated with, it's in Windsor, it's associated with the royal family. Here we go again. He is a Common Purpose 2020 graduate, and in fact, he is Windsor Leadership Trust alumni. So really, the point that I'm making here is that when we look at these pretty front ends to the voluntary sector, we have to appreciate that behind it is a fairly disgusting apparatus. The big volunteer is very much part of the big society. It's designed to draw people into working directly with the beast, where they are exposed to training courses designed literally to change people's minds. This is not something that really we should be supporting. It's something we need to understand. We need to do the work to understand the networks that are operating behind this type of initiative. And we want to run a mile from it, really. Shut it all down, in my opinion.
Well, that's absolutely a key thing. The figure that we had a few years ago about this third sector, the charity sector, was over 170,000 charities with a minimum of 44 billion. So what we've seen as this corporate charity sector has grown, of course, we're not seeing less people sleeping rough on the streets, we're seeing more. This is nothing to do with helping humanity. This is about a machine which is designed to, as Mike's saying, suck in everybody, particularly youngsters, particularly children, to get them involved in something, because this is the heart of David Cameron's immensely dangerous socialist big society. So somebody's just said in the chat room, well, it seems like they're making money for themselves. That's a very small part of it. The fact that you've got the chief executives of these charities paid a minimum of £100,000 a year. Yes, they're paying themselves, but what they're actually doing is carrying out a political agenda. And if you want to start to pull that apart, then people need to understand what's really going on with the Guardian newspaper and the Scott Trust, which is behind the Guardian. We'll do more on that in due course. Mike?
Yeah, just as a final point on this, I mean, any time that anybody's looking at these types of leadership charities or some of these other foundations and charities that are apparently doing good work but actually have a political agenda, you look at their annual reports, and that goes for the Windsor Leadership Trust or the Clore Foundation or any of these other the voluntary groups, and a lot of money is coming to them from the government. They are de facto sort of unofficial departments of government, civil service in the third sector rather than being in the private sector.
Quangos, quasi-autonomous non-governmental organisations. That's where it all comes from. Well, links in with education,
It does. Well, this story here was sent in by a viewer. Thank you very much for that. Teachers in America are complaining about Common Core and how the national standards are turning lessons into data dispensing sessions. Common Core's standards mission statement state that they provide a consistent, clear understanding of what students are expected to learn, so teachers and parents know what they need to do to help them. The standards are designed to be robust and relevant to the real world, reflecting the knowledge and skills that our young people need for success in college and careers. With American students fully prepared for the future, our communities will be best positioned to compete successfully in the global economy. Well, teachers say that they are no longer unique and that anyone can do the teaching, even machines. And current teachers are complaining that Common Core has taken away the joy of teaching and they feel like they're just robots. So I had to look in to see if there was a UK version of Common Core, and I came across this, and it's the Children's Workforce Development Council. Well, that actually closed down back in 2012, and it was then taken over by, I think we've got a slide of who it's taken over by.
This one.
Oh, this is still Children's Workforce. This is what their page looks like now, and they're getting behind the sponsor a child.
So this is where it comes from on the Wikipedia. It tells us here.
Yeah, and they were then taken over by the Children's Improvement Board, which basically is exactly the same as what they have in America, the Common Core, where students are literally just being taught from a computer, and there's just verbal diarrhea, basically. Just repeat, just follow and repeat. There's no independent thought process going on at all.
Yeah, rigid curriculum by the government, which of course is what you'd expect. Mike, if you just pop that one back. This title, I know it's now changed, but Children's Workforce Development Council, they are talking about children being a workforce.
Yeah. And if we look, we've also got Every Child Matters strategy as well involved with this.
And we had the Lib Dem Minister for Families and Children, Sarah Tether, I think her name was. But when we looked at her responsibilities, it was to do with the commissioning of stuff around children. So the moment we get near children, we're talking about massive amounts of profit, but they were talking about having a children's workforce.
They were. But if we have a look at the next slide, this is who are now taken over the children's workforce, basically, and the services, and local authority children's service are leading the development of a new system for improving and challenge through a children's improvement board. Members of these include local government representatives, NGOs, children's services and local authorities, chief execs and Department for Education. Members will be reviewed after an external evaluation of the government arrangements. So this is who's going to be taking over. Yep, next slide, please. ComRes. Okay, there's been an article today. We haven't got the article up from Press TV. Okay, so Press TV today put out a story where it says ComRes, who are this firm here, have been commissioned by Circle Housing Group to find out about payday loans, and what they found that 7 million people will be taking out loans just to get through Christmas this year. 35% of these would use the loan to pay energy bills. 1 in 20 said they would go to payday loan companies, whilst 150,000 said they would just go to on the street loan sharks. And this is ComRes. It's employed by the government, huge firms, to do market research, consultancy, and as you can see, serving clients in the UK.
Yeah. So we've got a pattern across the country at the moment that austerity, that's the delicate word for it, but what we're really creating is poverty. We're forcing people out of their homes with a bedroom tax. If you're sleeping rough on the streets, you're now being moved on in many locations. We've got, it's in America, but people saying we should ship our unemployment overseas. So something very, very nasty is being created. And we just want to say, don't get caught out by this sort of thing. Here we've got an article on social supermarkets, where even Britain's poorest people can afford the finest food. This is the big fishing net, because the social supermarket is, of course, part of the big society, and in our opinion is the first stage for the state to control food.
Absolutely.
It's looking behind it, have a look at the cooperative movement and what that really means and how it's being applied. Well, we get other clues as to what these people are trying to do to us. This is Mr. Attenborough, a favourite of Mike, I think. I think I'm correct in saying that this man is very keen to reduce the world's population as quick as possible. And the focus is on wildlife, the priorities on wildlife. Now, we've had a number of people contact us because they've said that we, the UK column, need to be very aware of the sheer type and scale of cruelty to animals. And we've paid attention to that, and hence we picked up on these articles from the press today. This is pretty harrowing stuff, but we've got a point for showing it. This is to do with Imperial College London, where a series of photographs have emerged, apparently after people infiltrated some of their laboratories. And they've got some graphic pictures. I've left the worst out of what's actually being done to the animals in those labs. And we're going to say only sick, low empathy people could do this. But what's driving it? Well, profit, much of it by the big pharma industry for drugs. But we're going to suggest there's a bit more to this, because all of a sudden animals are hitting the mainstream media. Have a look at this one. Apes feel love, joy and sadness just like us, so give them human rights. And this has come from conservationist Damon Aspinall.
Well, he's not just a conservation Aspinall, was he?
Tell me more.
Well, I think we have more research done, but there are links to the elite of this country with Aspinalls.
Oh, well, that's
the
interesting.
Aspinall family.
We just pop up this comment. We've got a couple, actually. Because this is what the real message of this headline is. You give apes human rights, humans are equivalent to apes, are equivalent to animals.
Yeah.
So the little game going on here is by nudging our emotions that we like animals, the state uses this applied psychology to get us to remove our own rights from ourselves. So we could say on one hand, this is very basic applied behavioural psychology, but where, of course, it's driving the nation is pretty dangerous.
I think this guy, this Aspinall, he's doing the same as David de Meyer Rothschild when he went and he did all this conservation stuff and he was all over the press, but not many people bought it. And Aspinall is on the same lines, probably at the parties with them all. But I'll look into a bit more on Aspinalls. They're a very, very wealthy elite family, though. So.
Well, he's pushing the animal side. Have we got confirmation of where we're going with families? We have. I'm going to bring you back to what we covered yesterday. This is Judge Sir Paul Coleridge. What did this man say? Well, he said this: you have no right to have children. You have no rights where children are concerned. So this top judge, we don't know how this man was put in the position of being a judge. We don't really know what his mentality is, although he's worked in the family courts. But here he's telling us that we have no right to have children.
I think we should all then go out and have lots more children. Are you up for that, Brian? Are you up for having more children?
I couldn't possibly comment on that on air. Right. This is the key bit. We've just been looking at how the government has been stealing children in Britain, and all of these are examples of how it's being done. So we've had a little girl, I think it was a girl, taken away too fat.
Yep.
If your children are not vaccinated, the state is taking the children. If the parent tries to protect a child from an abusive partner, the children are taken. If you home educate your children, many cases the state has then taken the children. If you're a Roma parent, children taken. Foreign parents, Italian, Russian, Slovakian, children are
baby blues, your children get taken.
Yeah, Nigerian children taken away. If the parents of the child has suffered from medical negligence in the NHS, the state is taking children. Parents, as you say, have got some mental problem, however small, children are taken. But we've also now got to the stage, of course, that if you can't pay your housing association rent, we're taking children. or if you are considered to be slow or special need parent, well, that means that your children can be taken. And why are they doing this? Well, there is one simple answer, because around these children, aside from the many who are horribly sexually abused, is the fact that the British government is now running a vast child trafficking organisation with huge profits. It's in our faces, the evidence is all there, hidden in plain sight. We'll just emphasise this because the state now is coming up to expand the system. Politicians are being blamed to get children active, so the children are getting fat, and the next stage will be that these children will be taken. Of course, we've got complete hypocrisy with this because we've got some very tubby politicians indeed. Presumably, they're going to be put in charge.
Yeah, supposedly. But my show yesterday had Clive de Carle on, and we were talking about, the obesity. We mentioned the 5-year-old that they want to take into care, and he's saying it's because of the financial situation in this country. People are having to buy the cheaper food, the cheaper version of the food, which are filled with the wheat. Hence, what I meant about the pizzas with wheat. They're buying the processed foods, which encourages people to eat more. There's no goodness in it, so they're just piling on the weight. So it's all just part of the whole agenda. And then the income, the state, if the parents are feeding their kids the rubbish food, the wheat and things which is making them become obese, then income the state to take the children away. So it's all...
It's planned.
Of course it is.
It's planned. It's absolutely planned. These people know what they're doing. Well, we're going to end on the note of water.
That's not good news, I'm afraid.
But this is Big Pharma.
It is Big Pharma. More than 50,000 people in the UK are affected by gardiasis, which is a parasite contracted by water contamination from animal and human faeces, apparently, via drinking water from the taps. Symptoms include diarrhoea, nausea, cramps, bloating and fatigue. Left untreated, it can lead to IBS, lactose intolerance and chronic fatigue. The Mail are saying gardiasis can be treated with metronidazole and tinidazole, but the side effects of these drugs are just frightening, which I think we have up here. And they basically got the same...
Bring those over, Mike, please. Sorry.
The same side effects as what this illness, this gardiasis. So the drugs that the Mail are saying that this condition can be treated with give you exactly the same things.
Well, all the side effects listed there are.
So I just had a look for, if people were looking for alternative medication or remedies. I found this page here, and they're saying it can be treated with garlic and horseradish as well as coconut. But as I say, these are supposed just remedies.
But people can make their own minds on that. We're ending on that note because, of course, if we look for solutions to what's happening, they are out there. And we're not going to apologise at the moment for really ramming home what is taking place in this country. We've got to see it and understand it before we can actually stop it. But essentially, the country is being hollowed out from the inside and every facet's being attacked, whether it's health, education, diet, etc.
I put some info actually on the forums under health about this story, so if anyone wants to have a look.
Excellent.
Some info in the forums.
Okay, well, we'll just end by saying that there was a particularly good episode of Ian Crane's Fracking Nightmare last night, and do have a look at that if you haven't seen it. We need to get people active, not only on that subject, but of course on everything that's going on and going wrong, whether it's to do with the charities or the deaths in the hospital or how our police sometimes behave. People have got to get off their bottoms to do something. It's not enough just to email a friend. But if you want something to do straight away, start talking about what you know, and of course get on the phone or send an email to your MP to start putting them under gentle pressure. And we always say to you, be measured, be polite in what you say. The real impact of your statement will be enhanced by being calm and polite in identifying the truth and the facts.
There's no show tomorrow, is there?
Yes, you are correct. There will be no show tomorrow or Thursday. As we have some other work to do. and we will be with you on Friday. So if you can bear with it till then, we'll see you on Friday.
And next Wednesday is the UK Column Christmas Social for anyone who would like to come and attend.
At the George Plimpton.
7:30.
Okay.
Bye.
See you Friday. Thank you. Bye-bye.